Hello, it's Professor Lieu. Welcome to our video. Today we are doing a live Q&A. Feel free to drop into the chat, pick my brain. Anything you guys want to talk about today that's art related is great. If you would like to grow as an artist, but you can't afford an art class, we've got everything you need here at Art Prof, critiques and tutorials. What I thought I would do is do a quick week in review. So you guys know what we've been up to for the past week. We've had a lot of really fun live streams lately, some interviews that we're very excited about. For example, we started out the week with this critique, myself and Jordan, and we were really excited that we were able to talk about race and COVID-19 and everything that's going on right now. So that was really fun, I think, to talk about current events. And so we had Rihanna S., who created this artwork with Posca pens on a literal stop sign, which I just thought was the coolest thing that you guys can see here in the thumbnail. So take a look at that. This was really cool. We had an artist interview with artist Song Kang. And Song was actually one of my former students. I had her at RISD when she was a freshman. And so we got to pick Song's brain about pen and ink wash drawing. Song is a modern day Dürer, in my opinion. Dürer was a German artist who worked in engraving. And so she did this series of drawings that's about her personal experience with the coronavirus. It's a beautiful series, a triptych that she's created. So you'll get to hear me talk to her about that process. The other cool thing about Song is that Song also did this scratchboard tutorial, which we released fairly recently. And if you have not had a chance to take a look at this tutorial, it's so good. Breathtaking. I could watch Song draw all day. So take a look at this tutorial. Thanks for joining, guys. Yeah, we're doing a daytime video, and actually in May, we are looking to schedule more daytime streams because I guess a lot of people in Europe are pretty bummed that they haven't been able to watch us live. Apparently it's like 3 a.m. for them, and that's not a very good time to be watching a live stream. So hopefully that mixes things up a little bit more, so more of you who are on the other side of the planet are able to catch us live. So hopefully that's going to fix some things for some of you guys. So we talked to Song for a little while, and if anybody here wants to know anything about pen and ink drawing, this is the video to watch. We do have some more tutorials that we are going to be producing pretty soon with Song. They're actually in the can. I just haven't edited them yet. But take a look at the stream because I think she's doing some really incredible things with pen. We also did a crit clash this week on Salvador Dali's very famous painting called The Persistence of Memory. Pretty sure a lot of people are familiar with it. It's the one with the melting clocks and everything. And wow, Kat Wong, she's such a champion because a few minutes before Jordan and I were supposed to go live to do this crit clash, his internet just completely fell apart. And I'm not joking. I texted the staff, and Kat was the one who was available. And she literally had a minute notice before she started on this crit clash. And she also kicked my butt. So yes, that was a little bit humiliating, but that's okay. I can handle it. So this was a really fun stream for us to talk about themes of the subconscious, a little bit about Dali as a character, because wow, he really was almost an exhibitionist, I think, to a degree, the way that he was behaving in public. He was a real nutcase, in my opinion. Okay, Mr. Mystique is asking, how would you get the attention of a gallery like Larry Gagosian or David Zwirner? Okay, well, Gagosian and Zwirner, if you're not aware, they are the mega powerhouse galleries. Gagosian's probably one of the largest art galleries out there. They have locations all over the world, not just in New York City. Same thing with David Zwirner. I mean, galleries like that, you're not going to get their attention unless it's through some type of personal connection. I mean, that's true with almost the entire gallery scene. I mean, there are so few galleries that will even let you submit your artwork to them. It's almost always word of mouth. You usually need some artist to recommend you. Sometimes it's a personal connection or something like that. And Gagosian and Zwirner, they're the top of the food chain in terms of the gallery art world. That's not really a place that I think is accessible to your average person who is not already plugged into that network. So my feeling is that if that's something you aspire to, it's like you have to somehow get into another gallery that will then get you their attention. And you have to get into a gallery that's very well known to get into Gagosian. I mean, you don't just go from nowhere to Gagosian unless maybe you're like married to Larry Gagosian or something like that. Like an example would be John Curran, who is one of the top internationally renowned artists out there. He showed with Andrea Rosen Gallery for a really long time, and then he transitioned to Gagosian. And Andrea Rosen is actually not around anymore. I believe that they closed their gallery, but it was, when it was around, one of the top-notch galleries in New York. And so it's like you need all these stepping stones to get there. And it's tricky because it's like you can almost miss the boat in a certain way. Like there is such a thing, I think, as showing at a gallery, which can actually make you look worse to people like that. I mean, that deserves like a whole stream in itself. But anyway, that's in a nutshell my thought. Chad says, I found a scholarship a gallery in Florida was offering for undergrads. You could see if you can connect that way by applying for scholarships. I think it'd be smaller galleries, though. I mean, I don't know the scholarship or the gallery, Chad. I'd have to research that a little bit more. But it depends on whether it's the gallery that's doing the jurying or if they're bringing in outside people, because that is very common. I've juried a lot of artist fellowships and things like Scholastic Art Awards, and I just did one for Pennsylvania State. Forget what the organization was. But anyway, the point is sometimes it's not always the people who work at the gallery who are doing the jurying, in which case that's not really a way to get the gallery people to actually look at it. Wen is saying, how are you doing? You're here for us every night, but you're managing all the craziness okay. Well, that's really nice, Wen. Thank you. That's not rude at all. My goodness. I'm doing okay. I mean, I feel extremely lucky that I'm in a position that I don't have to worry right now about having a place to live and having enough food and able to make sure my kids are taken care of and everything. So we're doing pretty well. I mean, I think that there's the usual chaos of what's going on. I think it's been a huge adjustment for a lot of people. I mean, if there's been any struggle for me, it's been trying to stay on a schedule and a routine, because I'm the type of person, I don't get a lot of sleep. And so the issue is that anytime I do have an opportunity to get more sleep than usual, I usually try to take advantage of that. The thing is, you can't do that every single day because you really start to get backed up after a while. But other than that, I mean, that's so trivial, I think, compared to what a lot of other people are dealing with. I don't live in New York City, so I feel very lucky, but that's a very nice one. Thank you for checking in. Mr. Mystique says, thanks for your brutal honesty. Love your channel. Yeah, I just don't believe in telling people that, oh, yes, you can do it. I mean, you can do it. Obviously, some people do. But my feeling is that if, say, you want to be and you aspire to be an artist that shows at a gallery like Larry Gagosian, what you're basically saying is, I want to be George Clooney. I hope I'm Brad Pitt someday. It's like, how many people really have the opportunity to be somebody like that? I mean, you think about all the aspiring actors out there, people who are trying to make it in Hollywood, and it's like, it's almost like a lottery who gets chosen. I mean, if you're Hugh Jackman, of course. How can you not get noticed? But what I'm trying to say is that it's really, really difficult. It's just the numbers are so much against you. Auntie M saying, do you think you can approach galleries at Art Basel, for example? You can go and you can chat with them in a casual manner. I mean, that's never going to hurt. But I think unless you're in a situation where you can repeatedly go to their events, so you'd have to be a local person to be like, you'd actually have to live near the gallery for that to be the case. It's probably not going to be that effective. Like, I've never met somebody once at an international fair and had a casual conversation and had that lead to something. That has never ever happened for me. Now, granted, maybe I'm not as cool as some other people. Maybe other people can actually make that happen. That is not common. It is not something I have really seen that much. I mean, I've shaken hands with some pretty famous people. I shook Sarah Z's hand. I shook Michael Mazzora's hand before he passed away. But that handshake did not get me like, ooh, in with Sarah Z. Like, that did not happen. Although what's interesting is I have two connections to Sarah Z and it's only 1 degree. So it's interesting how small the art world actually is. We are all interconnected. And so really, Auntie M, my answer to that is if you want to make a connection with a local gallery, there's a couple things you can do. You can follow them on Instagram and not just follow them, but comment, interact, like really talk to them. Maybe if they're following on Twitter or something like that. Although I think that's less common. I think most galleries are only on Instagram. And then if, say, you go to every single opening that they have and you get to know the artist, you get to know the director. And the problem, I think, you guys, with galleries is that a lot of artists make the mistake of asking for something right away. And that is a big mistake, you guys. Don't do that. You have to talk to these people, I would estimate, at least 4 or 5 times before you can start to ask for something. Like, I've had people come up to me after a lecture that I gave in just some place, and some people just come up and say hi, and that's great. Like, I'm totally happy to talk to people. But I also have some people, like I had this one person who came up to me after a lecture. They just gave me their business card, and I was like, oh, that's it? You're not even gonna like talk to me about what the lecture was about? It was such a turnoff. Like, if anything, that made me not want to look at their business card. And so I think that if you're gonna introduce yourself, just introduce yourself. That's it. Don't say, look at my work. What's your, don't do that. Okay. That is such a big turnoff when you first meet somebody. And that networking is so important. I actually have a lecture I give on business tips for artists. It's in the can. I just have not had the time to edit it, but I do talk about things like that, specific strategies that you can do and not do, try to avoid when you're trying to network. Let's see. I think most of us need to realistically look at alternate avenues if we want to make a living. I used to teach on cruises, says TJ. Yep, most people can't just get the job that they want. I mean, that's extremely uncommon. Diverse revenue streams are key for many artists. I would agree. I think that what I've seen a lot is there's this almost fantasy that, oh, if I make it as a freelance artist, that means I'm amazing and I have been extremely successful. And that's true. There's some people who really do make it as freelancers and who do live off of that income, but there are very few. I don't know a lot of people who do that. Most people I know who freelance, they freelance work as a supplement to something else. Like maybe they teach, or maybe they have a job being a studio technician, or whatever it is. I know very few people who can handle that. It's really, really hard to do. And so multiple revenue streams for a lot of artists makes a lot of sense. I mean, I do that myself. I mean, I teach, I sell my work, I do lectures, I run Art Prof, although Art Prof doesn't, Art Prof's the opposite. Art Prof is like bleeding cash all the time because we have like a tiny budget and we're always like barely making it. So Art Prof is not really a revenue stream at all, my goodness. Okay, let's see. When it's saying, you have any tips for managing time, meeting deadlines? As a self-employed person, I find it so hard. Well, I think that what I usually do is I create a false deadline. So I say, okay, if the deadline is December 31st, I want it done by the 29th. Because you know something? There's always something that happens. There's some extra touch-up that I forgot to do, or I realize, oh, this is going to take more time to do this. Because you know something, guys? I have never done a project where I overestimated the amount of work it was going to do. It's always the opposite. I always underestimate. And so that's why I leave like a little cushion, because if you say to yourself, oh, I think this project's going to take me 8 hours. It never does. It always takes 10. And you guys tell me in the chat if you've had the opposite where, oh, I thought it was going to take 8 hours and oh, it only took 6. I think that's extremely rare that that's the case. So I create these cushions for the deadlines. And also, I think a lot of people, if you work professionally, you start to realize that meeting those deadlines, that determines whether you get hired or not again. And if you don't meet that deadline, you are now known as the person that can't meet a deadline. And that's a problem. And I have let go of people who could not meet a deadline because you can't rely on them. It's too stressful because then it happens to you and you end up being the one that pays the price. So it's a real issue. And I think for a lot of people, when they realize, oh, whoa, those are the consequences, I think it's pretty motivating to get it done. Johnny is saying, can we make suggestions for the art dares? Thought it'd be fun to draw one or more of the art prof staff that we see all the time. Don't know if that has been done before. Well, Johnny, I can tell you as an art school professor, I can tell you I have had years of students drawing me. They're actually really funny. I should post them at some point. I think the one that was the funniest was somebody did a drawing of me as an otter. I don't know why. I have no idea why she decided to do that, but it was really funny. She like really captured my grouchy professor expression. But that would be a great art dare, Johnny. I think that would be hilarious. And actually, I had somebody, I think last week, who I guess was doing sketches and taking notes during one of my anatomy lectures, and they posted it on Instagram and tagged me. I just thought it was hilarious. And there was somebody else who did one that was me, Jordan, Eloise, and Kat. Like they had a whole Instagram story. So we totally should do that, Johnny. I'm going to put that down on our list. Auntie M is saying, should I use my friend's connection as he is signed to a Finnish blue chip gallery? Well, Auntie M, it depends on your relationship with your friend, because not everybody is in a position to be able to make that ask. For example, I have friends who I'm pretty close with who do show at like major Chelsea galleries. Like I have this one friend who is a colleague of mine who is like internationally renowned, like expert in their field. They show at a Chelsea art gallery. They're in multiple museum collections. And I'm not just talking some museums. I'm talking like Whitney, the Met, Museum of Fine Arts and stuff like that. This is not a small time artist. But I'm not going to go up to that person and say to them, introduce me to your art dealer. Get me in. I just don't think that's very appropriate. And so I just feel like you have to evaluate the situation. The better thing is if you can get the person to recommend you. I mean, if they decide on their own, oh, I want to recommend you for this, that's great. That's the better thing, because I definitely have had that happen where a colleague was like, oh, do you want me to put you in touch with this person? And I'll say, oh yeah, that's great, fabulous. But I'm less comfortable saying to them, hey, can you talk to this person about me? Because it's a little bit desperate, it's a little bit pushy. And then you're putting that person in an uncomfortable situation, because what if they don't want to recommend you? That's awkward. So I don't really recommend doing that. I think it's better to cultivate relationships, and if people want to recommend you, great. I think that's absolutely fine. Okay, let's see who's next. Cesar is saying, have you seen more politically themed art over the last few years? I don't know that I've seen more of it. I mean, definitely whenever there's a major event, I do think there is this surge of artists who are creating art as a reaction to that. That said, though, political art, I think, is hard for a lot of people because it's difficult to publicly make a statement about your political views. I mean, it's hard to make political artwork and not say something about what you actually think about it. And I know, I mean, for me, I avoid politics online. I avoid politics in terms of my classroom. That's not really something I feel is my place to really talk about. So I would say, for example, the coronavirus has definitely had that effect on some people. Like I was talking earlier, this interview that I did with Song Kang was about her response to the coronavirus. And so you're going to start seeing that, I'm assuming, because this is not something that's going away anytime soon. People are thinking about it. There's almost no chance that that's not going to influence artists in some way. Let's see, Salma saying, thankful for Art Prof. I want to get into an art college. Found a lot of helpful advice and information. Subscriber from Morocco. Wow, that is really cool. I don't know that we've ever had somebody from Morocco on the stream. Or if we have, I didn't know about it. That is great. So happy that you could join us. Thank you, Rachel, for liking our videos. That's wonderful. And Phoebe is saying, you have any tips or specific resources for oil or soft pastels? Got some at home, but I've always been intimidated by them. Well, Phoebe, I think soft pastels and oil pastels, they're really different beasts. My recommendation, the one recommendation I would make that I think is for both, is I find that color drawing media, this goes for crayons as well, not fun to do on a white sheet of paper, because you always end up with that white grain that shows up. And so the color never really looks that full. It always looks a little bit unfinished. So my recommendation for oil pastels and soft pastels is to use a toned paper. You can get a paper that's gray. You can get, even black paper is really fun. Sometimes the contrast can be really exciting. I oftentimes enjoy doing that. Or there are lots of pastel papers where it's like neutral tones, where it's like a neutral olive green, or maybe it's like a tan color or something like that. So I'd recommend doing that. For soft pastels, I think it's important to work light to dark. I think if you get dark too soon, it's a big mistake, and sometimes it's really hard to get rid of because you can't really erase it. It's very hard to do once you've layered it quite a bit. And I would say for soft pastels, look at great pastel drawings. Like I would look at Odilon Redon, I would look at Mary Cassatt, I would look at Edgar Degas, and look at how they make marks. Because what I find with soft pastels is people get very smudge happy, and it ends up making your drawing really, really muddy. That is the danger with chalk pastels, is that they get muddy so fast. Oil pastels are easier. Oil pastels, although, I don't know, people get smudge happy with those too, but it doesn't seem to hurt you as much as it does with soft pastels. And another thing I would just say is don't underestimate the power of a mark. Like letting a mark calm down, be fresh. I think everybody's like, oh, I got to blend it to death. Don't do that. I think that if you look at Degas drawings, you'll see there's very little blending. Actually, a lot of it is just direct marks. Erin Goldberg says, thoughts on Jackson Pollock? Well, I would say there's two perspectives. The first one is his context within art history, and also there would be my personal opinion, and oftentimes they're very different. For example, I can recognize that Jackson Pollock was a leading artist in the abstract expressionist movement, and I can understand the context of abstract expressionism, why it happened, and also how it's influencing artwork today. I mean, artwork that gets seen widely, there's no way that it's not going to influence people at some point. I'm not a fan. I don't really think it's that great. I mean, I'm somebody who really loves the hand. And yes, his artwork is made by hand, but I don't feel that there's a lot of thought in there. I mean, I have not spent a lot of time analyzing his work. It could be that there's something in there that I'm missing, but I would say my cold read, my very shallow read, is that I'm not into it. He's not my personal taste. Okay, let's see. Any tips on finding good reference photos, says Lizard Box. Lizard Box, my recommendation is, first of all, if you can shoot your own photo, you should. Here's why. Because most of the time, the photos you find online are terrible. They usually are low res. Usually the lighting is terrible, especially of people. Because actually Jordan McCracken Foster, who's an art prof, teaching artist, he said the problems he has with finding photos of people is that a lot of the photos of people online, they're photoshopped. And so people look too perfect. They look all weird and glowy, and it's too much like a magazine photo, and people don't look like that. I mean, assuming you want to draw somebody that is not like Heidi Klum or something like that. Maybe you do. But anyway, the idea is that if you can take your own photo, you should. And do things like go for a trip. Like, for example, we have a tutorial. I don't have an image for it right now, but it's Alex Rowe's gouache painting tutorial. And he and I we actually went out to a graveyard specifically to shoot our own reference photos. And the cool thing is that by doing that, we got a lot of ideas that we didn't have before. Like we found this weird gravestone that like a tree trunk had like grown around it. It was so weird. And it's like we would never have found that if we hadn't shot our own reference photos. Now, that said, sometimes you need a drawing of a flamingo and you can't get there. The zoo's closed or whatever like that. I think that you have to search reputable sites. Like stock photo sites are usually bad. Like if I wanted a picture of a flamingo, I would look up National Geographic. They have beautiful photographs. Pinterest is okay, but it's hard because you have to wade through a lot of really bad photographs. So that's not really my favorite place to go. But actually, Kat Huang, who is another teaching artist here at Art Prof, she said that a great source for people is Facebook because those are real people. They are not people on Pinterest who have been photoshopped to death. And so that's another way you can do that is just get in there and just snoop around at people's photos. And of course, if you want to use someone's photo, you should ask permission. Never just take the photo on your own. Wow, we have Erin from Israel. Very cool. We got people from all over the place. Ashley is saying, is there a reason I shouldn't mix acrylic and gouache? Not that I know of. I mean, I would imagine they would be okay. The only thing about gouache is sometimes if you paint it a little bit too thick, it does crack, but I think you should be fine. Mr. Mystique, can you ever interview one of your friends from a big gallery, how they got it, the experience with them? Well, that really depends on the artist. I can tell you that unfortunately, a lot of people who are that high up on the food chain aren't really big fans of YouTube, don't really spend a lot of time here. And this may not be a venue that they are into. I'd have to ask. I will think about it. But I can tell you that I'm a little bit doubtful just because of the culture of YouTube and how it's perceived by a lot of people. Rachel saying, how do you stay motivated when your art supplies aren't working with you here in Dubai? You don't really find art quality supplies. I wouldn't mind if all the watercolors weren't chalky. Yep, that's really challenging, Rachel, because art supplies really do impact tremendously in your experience. But we have this new chart of home art supplies in the teaching and online learning section that is on our website. This is brand new. This is for the coronavirus situation because a lot of people are working remotely. And not every supply on this page is necessarily going to be for you, but I think you should think about less conventional art supplies. Like you don't have to use watercolor. Like I actually I saw somebody on Instagram, they looked at our chart and they did a drawing with soy sauce. And honestly, it looked like walnut ink. Like it really did not look that different. And so sometimes it's just really, really fun to be able to use something that's a little bit less conventional. Because what I like about home art supplies is that they're cheap. And sometimes when you get really expensive art supplies, for me, it actually sometimes makes me a little bit nervous because I'm like, oh, this watercolor paper costs $25. I better do a really good job. It's like a lot of pressure on me to have to do that. Flore saying, what do you think people can learn from Vincent van Gogh? I would look at the brushwork. And the colors are very vibrant, but I think the brushwork is what interests me the most. I know a lot of people think about Vincent van Gogh mostly in terms of his paintings, but I'll tell you my favorite work for Vincent van Gogh, definitely his drawings. And those are not seen very widely. I think I saw them 10 years ago. They were part of an exhibition at the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston, and I was like floored by those drawings. I think they're charcoal drawings. A lot of them are people in like domestic situations. He did a painting called The Potato Eaters. That's somewhat similar. And so you might try looking up his drawings because I think that they're severely underappreciated compared to his oil paintings. Let's see, what are your thoughts on dark art and artists that paint them, says Mr. Sonnen. I think that's fine. I don't mind dark art. I mean, some people really don't like my art because my art is not very pretty or very happy at all. I mean, the only thing that I'm really against is any artwork that has hate speech or something that is blatantly racist, something like that. That's what I'm not into. M. Kosa says, I want to take my art to the next level in terms of creativity. Any tips on how to create more creative compositions? Wow, South Africa, very cool. I would say creative compositions, one thing you can try, I mean, I don't know what your artwork looks like, but what I typically see is that a lot of people just do those standard rectangular compositions because that's what's seen most broadly. And I've been encouraging a lot of my students lately actually is look, you don't have to do a rectangle. Like just because that's what everybody does, it doesn't mean you have to do it. And I've had a lot of students do some really cool stuff that is some strange shape and very, very long or very, very tall, or do something that's a scroll or really super uneven. I think you should play with that because that will, without a doubt, shift up how you treat composition. I think that if you are sort of feeling stuck and it's like, it's that same rectangle again, that is difficult to do. Let's see. Thank you very much, Damara Carpenter. I've been watching your videos as I work on a drawing. So appreciate you and Art Prof. Thank you so much for the super chat. We really appreciate that, you guys, because you know what? Every dollar matters for us. I think I've said this before that we operate on a shoestring budget. I mean, I'm so grateful for the staff we have is so generous with their time and everything, but they got to get paid for their time, which is extremely valuable. And we have not gotten to the point where we can break even yet. I'm hoping someday. We'll see. So any way you guys can support us, we are so grateful for that. Thank you so much, you guys. Let's see. Who is next? Natalie is saying, what is the best way to figure out what colors to use in a painting? I mean, Natalie, it really depends on the artwork that you're creating. One thing I would consider is, do you want your painting to really be about color? Because I really think that there are some painters, their paintings aren't really about color. They're more about, say, form or lighting. Here's an example. If you guys think about Rembrandt and his oil paintings, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that a Rembrandt painting is not about color, because it is. And he does an incredible job painting skin surfaces and showing the transparency. He's amazing. But if you really look at the way color is contextualized in a Rembrandt painting, the lighting and the form, I think, is more important to Rembrandt in the color. They're all important, but I'm just saying if relative to each other, I feel that the color is more important. So you have to say to yourself, okay, well, if form and lighting is more my priority, maybe I should do something more monochromatic. Think about it that way. Or maybe it's like really about color and maybe the form and lighting is less important. And so I do think it's helpful to think about, well, what am I really after? Can the color help me? Sometimes color is really good for establishing a mood. So you could say to yourself, okay, well, do I want to make a painting that's like really happy and joyous? Do I want to make one that's darker and more somber? In which case you can choose a color palette that really starts to emphasize that. Let's see who's next with questions. Thank you guys so much for all these compliments. I love it. You guys can never tell me too much that you love Art Prof and think we're great and doing an awesome job, because I love working on Art Prof, but it's hard. It's a ton of work and it's every single day. It's ongoing. I mean, I'm not built any other way. I can only do things like this that take up a huge amount of time and are extremely time consuming. I love that part of it, but wow, it makes it all worth it. Like when I read the comments, I read what people are writing on YouTube and in the Discord and everything. Oh my God, I feel so elated every time you guys tell me about how things are going. Damara saying, I mostly work from photos, but I take them myself. Since watching your videos, think I'm going to try my hand at life drawing. That'd be great. You know what I'd recommend, Damara, is I think the best video on our YouTube channel for learning how to draw from life to get started, if you have not done a lot of it, would be Lauren and I have a cat drawing tutorial. And I work with colored pencils and she works with Faber-Castell Pitt pens. And you get to see how we observe, how we break things down, and how to draw a moving object. It's really fun. Although it did help that her cat Spicy took a nap for the second drawing. So he just was in this one little position for so long. I was like, thank you, Spicy. That was great. Her other cat, Tor, was a total diva and was like on an exhibition the whole time. He was very, very funny. Okay. Femke is saying, what are some good things to paint with when you're starting with oil paint? Well, what are some good things to paint? Okay, so you're asking about subjects. All right. My feeling is, number one, oil paint is really hard. I know it sounds weird to say that because I think a lot of people would assume that maybe a more complicated subject like, say, intaglio printmaking or, say, bronze casting and sculpture would be harder. I think oil painting is harder, honestly, because I think it's really slow to learn. I think it's very confusing, and a lot of people get very frustrated extremely fast because they end up saying, oh my God, I've been painting for so long and I'm not really improving and I'm still so frustrated. That's just the way it is, guys. Oil painting is so hard. And I studied oil painting for so long and was so frustrated. And actually, I'm shooting a tutorial right now with Kathy Speranza, who's probably going to do a live stream pretty soon, probably this month. And I've been working very closely with her, and it's been wonderful because she's teaching me all these things about oil painting that I never knew about. And I'm really, really excited about that. So that preview video is probably coming next week. So you guys can take a look at that because, oh my God, I'm so jealous of her paintings. It's just really obscene how jealous I am of her paintings. She's so good. Look her up, Kathy Speranza. She's on Instagram, Speranza Fine Art, which is really fantastic. Okay. Let's see. Yeah, Teresia saying join Discord. If you guys are not on the Discord channel, join us because I'm in there all the time and I love interacting with you guys and hearing what you're doing. You can post your artwork for critique. You can get comments from other users. It's a really nice group of people, you guys. I'm so inspired by the community we have because I think a lot of people associate the internet as a place where people are not very nice to each other. And we are. At the Art Prof family, we're very nice to each other and very supportive, which is really, really refreshing. Joey is saying oil painting requires so much patience. Yes, absolutely. So those of you out there who are about to start oil painting or are oil painting, it is okay to be really, really frustrated because it's like that for everybody, I would assume. Maria T saying, love your channel, feel like I'm improving. Will you create videos about landscape painting or drawing? See, it just kills me, guys. We have so much content that's shot in the can, ready to go. It's just, we gotta edit those videos and they take so long because I'm a perfectionist and I want them to be really good. And the production quality for me is very important for those studio tutorials to be very, very high. So they take forever, and I'm a one-woman editing crew. We just don't have the budget to hire more people to do that. So it just takes forever and ever. But the point, Maria, is that we have a watercolor tutorial, which I shot last summer in Utah. It's a little embarrassing that it's taken me so long to get to it. But that tutorial, I actually think I'm going to split it up into segments because it's really long. Like I did like 6 paintings for that. So I might just release one video at a time per painting, but that's all landscape. And it's a blend of watercolor and also these new alcohol-based brush pens that Tombow created. And so I think you're really going to like that video tutorial. I think that's going to be a lot of fun. Let's see. Baperistic is saying, I watched Is This Drawing from a Photo? Cool. Yeah, that was the stream from last night. Let me pull up the slides so you guys can see it. It was with me and Jordan and Alex. Really enjoyed it, but when it's over, the first thought is I need more. Yes, well, you know, you're going to get more because actually Jordan and I were saying after the stream with Alex as well, we were like, dude, we should make this a game show. Like, it really felt like a game show. And we were like, we should have like a tournament where it's like the whole Art Prof staff and we can like ascend to different levels. We were like, oh my God, that would be really, really cool. So maybe someday we'll organize something like that. But we do want to make it a series. We do want to do it because actually we didn't get to all the pieces that I had lined up. I had like 8 pieces lined up. So we've got content for that. So yeah, if you guys enjoyed Is This Drawing from a Photo, let us know. And if you have an idea for a cute game show title, I think that would be great. I was thinking, because we talk about ourselves as the Art Prof family, might be funny to call it Art Prof Family Feud, but I don't know. I have to talk to the staff about it and see what's happening. Clara, you're like a cool art mom. Yeah, everybody calls me that. Like one of my students at RISD, he said to me at one point, he's like, you're my RISD mom. I'm like, okay, good. I guess that works. Whatever. Okay. Raphael saying, since a lot of things are moving online, been reluctant to post art for fear of theft Adding a watermark doesn't feel right to me. What can I do? Yeah, Raphael, I'm not a fan of those watermarks. I think they're pretty tacky. And honestly, if somebody really wants to steal their artwork, they can just do a good Photoshop job and do that. I've seen people say, oh, well, I'll just put my name at the bottom. I'm like, yep, I'm going to just use a crop tool if I want to steal it. So my feeling, Raphael, about that, you can't really do anything about it except the only option is to never, ever post your art online, which I'm guessing a lot of people don't want to do because your work won't really be seen very much, unless you're like on TV or in the newspaper, which is a little bit challenging. So my feeling, Raphael, is that unless somebody is making serious money off of your work, it's probably okay. People take my stuff all the time. Like I'll see stuff, my work on Instagram, and for some reason people always want to put poetry over my drawings and they always want to change the color. And so I see all these versions of some poem over my artwork and it's annoying, but whatever. I mean, those people aren't making money. Now, if Target took one of my designs and put it on a t-shirt, I don't know why you'd want to do that. But if they did that and they made a lot of money, I would call my lawyer. So I think unless something like that happens, it's not that important. I don't know a lot of people that has happened to. I know it has happened. I've definitely read stories and I've heard about it. It has never happened to me. I don't have anybody I'm close to for whom that has happened before, but whatever. M. Koza says, what about tips for thinking of more creative subjects? M. Koza, I would say it comes down to brainstorming. I think a lot of people don't take the time to brainstorm. And so what ends up happening is they come up with a subject. They don't think about it for very long and they don't realize what they can do with it. And I think that's when you know if you have a good subject, when you know that, wow, oh, I could do this, I could do this, I could do that. And if you don't feel that way about the subject, it's probably not a very good one. Ideas are really tough, guys, because there's no rules and I can't tell you exactly how to get it done. Okay, having your name on your work is really useful now. So many images end up on Pinterest or Tumblr without context. This way viewers can find you afterwards. That's a good idea, Wen. Yeah, if you don't do it as like a watermark, I think it's okay. In fact, when this chart that I made of these home art supplies has been circulating Facebook for a little while, people seem to really like it a lot. And I remember when I put together the image, I did put Art Prof logo and our website on the image. And now when people are sharing it, it has our logo on it. Because I knew if I didn't do that, it would get widely circulated and we would not get the credit for it. So that's a great point. I'm really, really glad that you brought it up. Your work was used by a Chinese factory outlet on cheap t-shirts. Oh, that's so terrible. You know, it's such a like complete violation. Like you have to be so sleazy to even think about doing that, much less actually following through. Oh, sorry, Mr. Mystique, I missed your question. Do galleries look down on representing artists that don't have a degree in fine arts? Is it a necessity to thrive in galleries? Not at all. Mr. Mystique, the galleries could care less. They don't care where you went to art school. They just care about the artwork. I mean, having connections with people at universities and art schools, it does not hurt you. I mean, there's another way for you to make professional connections and to network, but your degree does not matter. Nobody really cares about that. MW is saying, what are some tips practicing local value in painting? Also a tip on painting landscape details. All right, let me answer the landscape one first because it's a little bit easier. That I would say is you have to learn to treat landscape abstractly first. Because I think people get a lot of ideas about, well, it's got to look like something. And yeah, that might be your final goal. That's fine. But if you tell yourself, oh, I need to make it look like a tree right now, like immediately, that closes off a lot of opportunities because inevitably to make it look more like a tree, you end up going for details too soon before you've established basic fundamentals like the lighting and the color scheme. So my idea is that you create a landscape that feels really loose and abstract and you slowly build towards that recognition. Now, local value, I'm guessing you're meaning like as in the darkness. I mean, my way that I really learned about fundamentals in oil painting was still lifes. And I know a lot of people groan, oh, still life, so boring. That's your fault if it's boring. Honestly, if you're bored, don't get boring objects. Like paint something cool. I mean, we did this oil painting tutorial. I got to paint a lobster. Like, that's awesome. I had so much fun painting that lobster. But if you want to make it boring and just paint peaches and apples, go ahead, but that's your fault. So I would say a lot of still life practice. That helped me a lot because portraits are so hard. Painting outside's a big pain. This is assuming you want to paint from life, but that's what I would recommend. Let's see. Joy Myers is saying, has Art Prof allowed you to be more free and creative? Creation of your art curriculum apart from RISD, how has a structured system of making classes for school helped in Art Prof? Well, Joey, I think what's helped for me is that I have so many years of teaching experience, I mean, over a decade at this point, that all the content's up here. I've got content up the wazoo, which is why when people on YouTube complain about, I don't know what to do next, I have no ideas, I'm like, how can you not have any ideas? I've got ideas like exploding out of my head. I can't even get them out. I mean, the amount that's on our YouTube channel, honestly, it's like 5% of what's in my head. There's just so much out there. But yeah, I mean, Art Prof has really helped me because sometimes I'll learn something for Art Prof that I then implement into my classroom and vice versa. So for example, one thing I did was Kat Huang did this character design tutorial, and I know nothing about character design, just nothing at all. And so she taught me this lesson, and I used it in one of my classes with a high school class, and it was super fun. The kids had a blast. And it's like, I would never have done that if Art Prof hadn't been around. So that was great. Rhode is saying thoughts on listening to music when making art. This is what you guys do. You go down to the video description below and you look at the Art Prof Spotify because we all have playlists. You can psychoanalyze our music choices. Go ahead. Mine is pretty entertaining. You guys can formulate new thoughts about me. And 10,000 Crows said, like to draw a tree, tried to draw a tree yesterday, made me so frustrated, really don't like drawing trees. Think if I get more interesting objects, it will be more fun. Exactly. Like if you don't want to paint it, like there's no chance it's going to be a good experience. Like you have to like what you see. And the thing is, it can be something really plain. I mean, I have paintings of crummy, dirty pipes on the street in China, but it was because for me, that pipe was beautiful because I loved it. There was something about it that attracted me. It doesn't have to be anything that unusual. I go for walks a lot, and sometimes I play this game where I'm like, okay, what am I going to see today on my walk that I would want to paint? Like yesterday, I walked by 3 little mushrooms, and I thought I would love to do a watercolor painting of that. So it can be very, very simple. It does not have to be that complicated. TJ saying on the Dolly Crit Clash, I'm going to pull up a slide here so you guys know, who held what opinion for real? I actually really had trouble with this stream because I am not a fan of Dolly. Like, I really don't like him or his work. I am not a fan. And I was like, oh my God, how am I going to argue for him? This is really, really hard. Kat got to argue what she actually believes, so it was a lot easier for her. So it was good. I mean, I had to really think hard about what to do. Rose says, tips on getting likenesses. Can get something I find appealing. When it comes to looking anything like the model, it's a different person. Okay, I would recommend, I do have a tutorial called 5 Portrait Drawing Mistakes featuring Benedict Cumberbatch, who is just, oh, so great. I have not thought about him for a while. I feel like I need to go watch Sherlock over and over again. Anyway, in that tutorial, I talk about how one of the top mistakes is worrying about likeness. And if you worry about likeness, it's totally a contradiction. You're not going to be able to do it. Got to think about the portrait in terms of abstract shapes. And eventually that will come. It's really hard because you feel like, oh my gosh, the only point of this portrait is to get a likeness. But if you fixate on that, it means you're not seeing the forms clearly. And that is not a good thing. So keep that in mind. A lot of it is in your head, guys, when it comes to portraits. It's not necessarily your drawing skill. Hope you guys will take some time. Check out artprof.org. Lots of fun stuff there, all free, that you can check out. A lot is not on our YouTube channel, links to art supplies and more resources. I hope you'll subscribe to our channel and join the Art Prof family because we're the best, obviously. And thank you so much to our top Patreon supporters who make everything possible for us. Thank you, all of you guys, for showing up to this chat so I didn't have to end up talking to myself for a long time, which is a little bit embarrassing, but I was spared that because you guys are fabulous. You all showed up and you're all so thoughtful. I love that. And by the way, if I didn't say this enough, join us on Discord. Really cool, fun place, lots of awesome people. Thank you guys so much. I will see you next time.